Okay, I think we're back. All right, so guys, this is probably a part three. So, so sorry about that. We're having a lot of internet connection problems again, but I'll just sort of wrap up what Miss Webb was saying, which is that yeah, Alan Dershowitz is this big hotshot lawyer who's appealed the Klaus von Bülow case. People of what they want to know that watch the movie Reversal of Fortunes. He's also a very very big defender of Israel and will smear and destroy anyone who speaks out against Israel. And what Miss Webb was explaining was that yeah, he's also connected to Epstein. He Some of Epstein's victims claim that he had raped them, although Dershowitz claims not. And in case people didn't hear, Miss Webb was explaining to us that some of the victims that some of the victims are now basically afraid to talk to anyone like Miss Webb or anyone because they're afraid of Alan Dershowitz, who most likely, I think it's safe to say, Miss Webb, that it's most likely that with his buddies in the Israeli deep state and the American deep state, they yeah, they probably can silence them or smear them endlessly, right?
Well, yeah, well, he's definitely done a smear campaign of several of the victims. But in addition to that, I mean, most of his threats are legal threats, and he says things. He's told these women things like, "I will take everything you have. I will make you beg for a settlement," and things like that, like really threatening to just ruin their lives even more. Just very, very sick, honestly. But there he is, still in a job teaching at Harvard Law School and still the high-powered lawyer. And, a lot of mainstream media just took his claims for what they were and didn't, question, even though when he said absurd things like, "Oh, I kept my underwear on and it was an old lady," when that doesn't make any sense based on everything we know about this case. So.
And then just before we get off talking, just before we get off talking about him, so now explain again that article he wrote where he said that the age of consent should be lowered because the moment a girl gets her period, she is an adult, and for many people who want the truth out about Epstein, that's probably a very disturbing insight into Dershowitz and all those partners in crimes of Epstein, right?
Right. Well, actually, this is the same excuse that Epstein rolled out after his first conviction, saying that, well, in other countries, the age of consent is lower. And in some places, as soon as a girl gets her period, she can, be considered a legal adult and can have sex with me. Right. And this is the same argument that Dershowitz had made years prior. So it's very easy to say that they had similar lines of thinking. Dershowitz claims he didn't engage in the same behavior in these types of situations where that activity was known to take place. But I think there's plenty of supporting evidence, including his smearing of the victims and his extreme legal threats against, these women who are not wealthy, that he certainly doesn't want that type of certain information to come out. And if you look at his past associations, including Roy Cohn, among others, he seems very comfortable with those type of individuals, to say the least.
Very briefly, if you can, what's the Bill Gates connection to Epstein?
Well, that takes a little longer to unpack than the time I have, but I will just say that there's been a cover-up of those ties. They go back to at least the 1990s. The New York Times claims it's only 2011, but they had business ties during the 1990s. It's in that Nigel Rosser article from 2001. Maria Farmer can confirm that they were friends with Bill Gates in 1995. A lot of their current, more recent ties had to do around mutual interests in science. And the former science advisor to Bill Gates was the backup executor of Epstein's will. Epstein's interest in science revolved around eugenics and transhumanism. Epstein was also known to be extremely, according to people like Maria Farmer, extremely racist against certain ethnicities, specifically people of African descent. Bill Gates says things like, 2018 said that his biggest worry in the world were too many young people in Africa. So it's very possible they had similar, very disturbing ideologies, and that invested in science. Their interests in science may have overlapped to some degree. We don't really know, but we do know that Epstein was in talks with Bill Gates to create a charitable health fund that ended up not happening because of Epstein's arrest. But well, what would have happened if that arrest had not happened? Would Gates have created that health fund with Epstein? We don't really know, but it's very disconcerting, to say the least, because these people, as I mentioned with Epstein, expressed very racist views in private, and very different, right, and that's very different from what their public perception was. Is someone like Bill Gates, who was willing to pal around with Epstein after he had been convicted of this type of behavior, be interested in those types of things? I think there's some indicators there, but I don't have enough time right now to unpack all of that. But what's important is that Bill Gates has tried to have his ties to Epstein, which were much more extensive than has been reported. There's been a cover up there.
And then very briefly, Epstein's ties to the entertainment industry.
I didn't really go into that very much, but he did have relationships with big name actresses, like Morgan Fairchild during the 1990s, and famous people, famous models like Naomi Campbell and stuff like this. There was a lot of overlap with some famous people there, but I didn't really focus on that because a lot of people in mainstream media reporting were focused on those types of things. Though, I mean, there were ties to Harvey Weinstein, who of course was involved in the entertainment industry and involved in very disturbing behavior. And there were attempts by Ghislaine Maxwell to get people like Maria Farmer's sister, Annie Farmer, employed by Harvey Weinstein and things like that. So apparently they had ties as well. And there's also pictures of them posing together at parties and things like that. So yeah, it appears to have been somewhat extensive in that sense. And, there's some other celebrities that pop up in Epstein's Black Book and things like that. Courtney Love, for example, and some other people. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, that's going to be continued then. I think we'll do it to be continued on that, and I think that's probably a good place to end. But before we go, any last thoughts you want to share with with my viewers and listeners on what they really need to understand about the whole Epstein scandal?
Oh, yeah, sure.
And really what they should do, as opposed to just being completely depressed and disturbed by the whole thing, because we also keep forgetting that there's a human story to this, which are those countless of victims.
Right. So what's important to remember, I'll be pretty brief here because I don't have a lot of time. Epstein was a project manager. This wasn't his operation. He wasn't the brains behind it. The people that were responsible for financing it and planning it, Epstein just helped execute it, right? But so did Ghislaine Maxwell, and she's free. But anyway, the fact that there's no accountability for these people, and that Epstein, mainstream media is treating this as, oh, Epstein's dead, this means this type of activity has stopped. This is false. This type of activity continues, and it has been going on for decades. And the reason it has continued is because there has never been any accountability. There have been cover-ups. And the reason these cover-ups have been successful in the past is because, the media landscape was very different before the internet. There wasn't a lot of pushback. It was just like, well, it's gone and disappeared from mainstream media. Mainstream media is trying to do that now. Do not let them memory hole this case. This is our best chance to wake people up to what is going on and to stop this. So it's very important to keep interest on this case, be vocal. There are numerous petitions going around regarding this case that you can sign, including one to get Eileen Guggenheim removed from the board of directors of the New York Academy of Art, because she is responsible for trying to pimp out several students and forcing Maria Farmer into essentially servitude with the Epstein network. There's also petitions about, the FBI investigation, like one being put forth right now by Nick Bryant. There's petitions about MIT and Epstein, his ties there, and his ties to Harvard as well. So there are definitely things you can do. But the most important is not to lose sight of this case and to keep reminding people, maintain its relevance, because if we let the media and the FBI cover this up so it gets a memory hold and people forget about it, then they win. And we cannot let that happen. There are too many victims whose lives were destroyed. And it's not just the 30 that came forward. There are thousands and thousands of victims here. And we don't know what happened to all of them. People like Maria Farmer think some of these girls were murdered. So we don't really know, and that the truth will come out at some point.
Organized crime and the deep state, I would not be surprised. Yeah.
Right. So it's important people keep that in mind, and that the way to stop these crimes is for there to be accountability. And until there's an accountability, this behavior will continue, and our children are in danger.
All righty. Well, on that note, Miss Webb, thank you very much for joining us on 1+1.
Thank you.
And I just want to say that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to start the show, was because there's a lot of fantastic truth tellers, mythbusters, and muckrakers that are out and about working today, but they don't get the attention they deserve, let alone the recognition they deserve. And I include you in that. That includes my previous guests, Eve Engler, and so forth. So one of the reasons why I want to do the show is so that I can so I can give you guys, a platform to explain the latest revelations you guys are doing, and also to talk about, why it is that so much people power movements are so weak and so forth. So I really hope that that you come back on, that you come back on again, that we have you as a regular guest, because I know I definitely really would like that. And then also I just also have to say, since if I had it my way, you would be getting the Pulitzer Prize and the Martha Gellhorn prizes. Not just for this, but also for so many of your previous stuff on Syria, Pierre Omidyar, and stuff like that. So it's going to be continued. But before you go, you're also writing a book. You're also going to be writing a book about Epstein, or you're trying to get it.
Yes. I'm writing a book about Epstein. It'll be out hopefully by the end of the year. It's called One Nation Under Blackmail. It's not just about Epstein, though. It's about the history of sexual blackmail operations in the U.S. A lot of what we've talked about today. If you'd like to support my book on Epstein, you can sign up for my Patreon, because all of that is going to pay for time when I had to take off from my regular writing job to, work more extensively on the book than I have up to this point, to help pay for my research assistant and childcare help and some other, related expenses to the book.
Well, I'm going to link I'm going to link to all of the Epstein stuff, as well as your past articles, which people can find on Minpress News, your current gig, which is The Last American Vagabond, and I do have your Patreon page, and I'm also going to link that there. Until then, Miss Whitney Webb, thank you so much for joining us on 1+1, and we hope that this is going to be the first of many conversations.
Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.
All right, thank you. Appreciate it.